right, fifth graders, today we are going to be creating a monster out of fabric. So the first thing you need to do is come up with some kind of sketch or drawing for what your monster is going to look like. So there's two ways you could go about this. The first way that you could approach your sketch is to take a piece of scratch paper and draw out what you want your monster to look like. So maybe your monster is round, has 2 arms, 2 legs, and some horns. Maybe you want your monster to have 3 eyes or 2 eyes. It's up to you. It's a monster. You get to decide how it's going to look. Think about some details for your monster. Maybe it has specific accessories like a flower hair piece, or maybe it has a little briefcase or a watch. You decide what kind of personality your monster has. From here, I could kind of plan out what color I want things to look like. If I want it to be gray body, white teeth, you could even grab crayons or markers and color it in, or just jot down some notes. This is a great place to start. If you feel like you have kind of a clear idea for what your monster is going to look like, you could skip that step and move on to here. And on this idea, this is what everybody needs to do. You need to make a tracing template for your monster's body. So each of our monsters will be symmetrical. That means that what happens on one side happens on the other. So that dashed line is showing where there's a fold. All right, when I get my fabric, I'm going to fold it in half and cut it. So if you're skipping that step, that's okay. You can just do it on this step. I'll leave it up to you, but everybody needs some kind of tracer. You need to plan out what you want your monster's body to look like before you cut. So on this paper for your template, you want to use the whole piece of paper. Don't make an itsy bitsy teeny little monster, because then all these details have to be that much smaller. Use the whole paper and sketch out just half of what your monster is going to look like. All right, so I had a curved head, an arm, a leg, and horns. From here, keep it folded, and this is a collage trick that we've used with paper before. Keep it folded and cut it out. When I open up this template, I'll see what my monster is going to be. Okay, this is great because then you can kind of get an idea of how it's going to look like with fabric before you cut. Now, if I like how this is going to look, I'm going to choose one piece of large fabric from the drive-through, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to trace with a crayon or a marker. I'm going to just trace half of it. And when I cut, I'll cut out half of the monster. All right, once your monster is cut out, you don't need this anymore unless you want to keep it for any other kinds of plans to show what kinds of details you have. That helps me help you if you need some help from me to cut things out. These little scraps, if they're big enough, they can go up to the scrap bin. This step is really important so that you have an idea of what it's going to look like before you get your fabric, because everyone only gets one piece. Now, up from the front, what you're going to grab are scraps. These are small pieces from other people's designs that they did not need. So I'm going to cut out the details for my monster. So my monster has 2 eyes. Now, another collage technique that you can use if you need to cut out 2 shapes that are the same is to put 2 pieces on top of each other and cut out 2 at once. And that way, they'll be an exact copy. I'll have 2 eyes that are the same. All right, so go through each of those pieces and parts and start to cut out each detail that you're going to. After your details are all cut out, you're going to grab a needle. Now this is a sharp sewing needle, so tuck it through the fabric of your monster so it doesn't roll away and you know right where it's at, and some thread. Now, when you're selecting thread, you need to think about the color. If you want the stitches to stand out, select a contrasting color. So if I really want to see the stitches, I'll use maybe like a pink. If I want the stitches to blend in, I would choose a dark color. I'll have the color stand out for this video. Now you need to thread your needle, so measure out an arm's length of thread, not much longer, otherwise it just gets tangled up. And this thread needs to go through that eye of the needle. Now my hands get really shaky, so my first tip is to tuck in my elbows, have my fingers touch in the middle, and then I can guide the thread through the eye of the needle. This is probably the hardest part of the project. If you need help with this, ask a neighbor, ask me, and I don't mind helping you. Now, the tails need to touch so that I have a loop of thread. When these tails touch, I'm going to tie a knot. So you're going to make a U, you're going to make an O, the loop goes through the O, and pull it tight. Do that again so your knot is nice and thick and it won't pull through the fabric. Now sometimes you get a knot there and a good knot there. Just keep tying and hopefully one of them will line up and you'll have a nice thick knot. This is also called a balloon knot. If you've ever tied the end of a balloon, that's what I'm doing now. Same thing. All right, I'm ready to start stitching on one of these eyes. So just like our sewing project last year, I need to start on the back so that all of the knots and not very nice things are hidden on the back side. And I'm poking up to the front and pulling until that knot catches. From the front, I'm diving back down to the back. Now I'm moving kind of slow because, as I said, this needle is sharp. If you get poked, it's gonna hurt. So kind of slow your stitching down, take your time. Over, under is another way to think about this pattern. It's similar to weaving. I'm going to stitch all the way around this eye. Now if I'm sewing along and I accidentally do 2 overs and I have a loop stitched on the fabric, if that happens to you, it's okay. All you need to do is cut off the thread and tie a knot on the back. We cannot take the needle and stitch it back through and do a back stitch because the fabric is woven too tightly. So if that happens to you, it's not a big deal. It happens all the time. Just cut off your needle, tie a knot, and start again. These projects turn out pretty cool, and you're going to be stitching on each individual piece and part so that your monster has all the details that you recorded on your sketch. I can't wait to see how these turn out 5th grade.